Speaking of investment, why don't we gears to Canada now and kind of talk about some stuff going on up there, across the border. I think talking about access to capital and being able to trade. We see companies like Tilray today, when we're recording June 9th. When I looked this morning, they were climbing the charts, and not a lot of news coming out of Canada. Nothing particularly notable. Obviously, Tilray made some headlines with their merger, becoming the largest. Although now I think there's some others that have made some deals, like the Redican deal. Yeah, Hexo. So Hexo is probably the largest at this point. And so, just interesting to see that stuff. Any thoughts on what's driving that overall?
We live in a crazy world, and it bothers so many of us who are either investors or operators in the American space. Just, you say Canada, but those stock prices have nothing to do with what's going on in Canada. Their fundamentals are not very good. They're not as good as the Canadian market. They're subpar for that market. They trade as if they're going to enter the United States, which is very far from the truth, most likely. Although, the CEOs of this company certainly, they're happy to feed the myth. They don't mind. But so it's all about NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, or basically NASDAQ. And, we have a new way of investing. You go on to Wall Street Bets, you see what's going on, and you buy it. And you don't necessarily understand the nuances of, like, wait, time out. Okay, well, I remember back in 2018 when California first went legal, the first stores open, and people are buying the ETF MJ. And you look at what's in MJ, and it's a bunch of Canadian LPs that have nothing to do with California. In fact, I think it's accurate to say that not a single company in that ETF at that time had anything to do with California, yet people have money and they buy it ignorantly, and it goes up a lot. And so that's what we're dealing with now, and it's frustrating. I mean, I bet it bothers you, Emily.
Oh, well, tremendously. I mean, I always talk about this. I'm like, I wish we could direct capital to the good shepherds and the people who are really building businesses that could be here in the long run. Sundial benefited from this crazy meme stock thing and basically paid off their debts doing it. So good for them. But it would be amazing if that type of capital flowed to even if it split across 10 names in the U.S. sector. It would be incredible, the things that could be done with that capital, and job creation and product expansion and so many different things that would be truly beneficial on the bigger level. But, this is when I watched Munger and when I watched Buffett and Munger many weeks ago now, it feels like they talked about this, and I just feel like the market has become even more of a gambling situation than it has been an actual investing machine. And it's, and you see it
Bitcoin, right?
I mean, we're living with things in the ether at this point, and it's really crazy. But I think that it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. But yeah, Tilray definitely benefits from that. And I saw, we were talking about it too. Like, you see Irwin kind of getting involved in the Reddit community. And I'm also wondering where the regulators are on what's acceptable. How are we thinking about how we talk about things? I mean, I still have issues with some of the advertising I saw from Robinhood over the last few years, where as a person in the financial industry, I know there are constraints about how I can talk about things. Like, I can't talk about promising returns or promising that things go up. And I feel like a lot of Robinhood's advertising was like, did you know if you put your money in here, it could be here? And it's like, well, it could also be there. So, it's a very complicated thing, and it does kind of drive me crazy because I just think there's a lot of better shepherds of capital. So,
yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right, Alan, that it's all about the access to the investor base and for the investors to have access to the names. But we'll just keep pushing. I hope many people are contributing to, policy groups who are trying to make changes in the capital markets and in equity issues and all of these things that we all talk about. We have been investing our own, like the actual people who founded Poseidon. We put our money behind all of these efforts and have since we got into the industry, and will continue to do so until I feel like things are fair and right. So I hope everyone's doing that, because that's the only way that things change.
So you're paying the lobby to get NASDAQ listing for all these companies? Is that part of it? I guess we all are, if you're a member of NCIA or some of these other organizations, right?
Yeah, we pay for political consultants to help us to understand the landscapes in both the state level and on the Hill. And we also do work networks to get access to speak to people in decision making and key stakeholders at these different groups like the NYSE, NASDAQ, and trying to understand their concerns. A lot of it is about hearing what are the perceived risks of inviting U.S. cannabis names into these different areas. So that's what we're trying to understand so we can provide solutions and answers to it.
I'm a rational person, so this bothers me on so many levels, but I see plenty of publicly traded power companies. I know that they have cannabis companies as customers. If you want to just look even closer, I mean, I'm very happy that GrowGen and all these companies trade on the NASDAQ, but does it make any sense that they can take money from these dirty cannabis companies that are state legal but federally illegal? Dirty, and yet they can trade. I don't understand it. It is crazy. And I think Ben Kovler said how crazy it is. If you want to buy a Canadian company, you buy it in America. If you want to buy an American company, you got to buy it in Canada. What is this? It's crazy.
Yeah, everything's upside down, topsy-turvy.
Yeah.
Do you think, is it, I mean, obviously lack of institutional capital that's in the U.S. markets is kind of the big driver, mostly just being retail investors?
Yeah, there are institutions. They don't get the liquidity that they want, right, Emily?
Yeah, there's no way. If an institution wanted to sell a meaningful part of their exposure to a company, they could destroy the market with one fell swoop. So you've got to be really careful about how you move. I mean, even Poseidon, we have to be very careful about how we trade in these names. And we do. We're very careful about it because we're truly interested in the best side of the market. Just because we want to potentially move out of a position doesn't mean we want to destroy it in the process. So we're very mindful of our actions and how we work through the challenges of this market. But that's one of the things I think, from a liquidity standpoint, and it just in case folks don't know, I mean, liquidity for all intents and purposes means your ability to trade in and out of a name and having enough people there to trade, to hold the stock at a certain level and to respond to your interest in selling or buying. And believe it or not, it's an actual challenge in cannabis because there's just not enough out there and not enough traders, not enough stock. It's a number of issues. And so, I mean, we face that with Ascend every day. In terms of what's able
trade like 500 shares a day sometimes.
Whoever's lucky enough to get those 500 shares.
Once the unlock hits, it'll get a little bit better. But I was going to say, Cy, one of the coolest things in the last 9 months has been mainly GTI, because they've done the best job of this. But I think even some other companies have really found some institutional investors. And GTI, they were able to do direct placement with no commissions to brokers or anything on both equity and debt. I mean, that says a lot. And I think I always want to know, I asked GTI, well, is that entity going to buy another company? Nope, they just like us. Bummer. But there are more and more companies out there that want into the space and that are somehow able to do it, get through their compliance departments. The market had to deal with a very sad story. Wasatch, great investment manager, loved the space, took positions in a few names, and you can go look at the charts and see what happened at the end of March. They had to exit. There was a change in policy, and so they exited. So it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But I think we can sound sad about this, but the reality is, these companies are thriving under very adverse conditions. It's suboptimal. I don't know, maybe it's not adverse, but suboptimal. Lack of access to capital, weird rules about not being able to ship across state lines, which sometimes benefits but also causes a lot of problems. 280E taxation, all these things that we all know about, but maybe listeners don't appreciate how hard it is to actually make a profit in this industry. Yet, you can go to New Cannabis Ventures and see there are companies that are certainly creating operating profits. That's what we list, but even net income. You're starting to see some of the major MSOs generate not only positive net income, but also positive free cash flow, which is, if we can do that in these conditions, it bodes well for the future.
Listen to High Rise on all major streaming platforms and watch the visual on YouTube.